Hello, hi guys. Welcome to another episode of the Booknerds podcast where we have hosted a wide variety of different authors. So, for today's episode, we have another amazing book called TIJARA'S Mystery Codes by Hemma Sood. Hello, ma'am.
Hello, Meenakshi. Wonderful to
Hi,
see
how are
you.
you?
I'm
Good
very
to see
well.
you
How are
too,
you
ma'am.
doing?
I'm
Yes,
good. We are so eager to start this session because there's so many
yes.
insightful things to speak about. So I'll just jump right in. I'll just give you an intro about the book. So the Tijara's Mystery Codes was like the perfect book for me out of everything I read this year because I love mystery. I love a good mythology story, and this was like a mix of everything, so it was like the perfect package for me. So I loved how you had intricately woven three different timelines together: the Kurukshetra battle, and then Rao Raja Balwant Singh, and then a kind of fictional present day event as well, all tying up to the mysterious elixir Amrita. So
Yes.
I'll just give a short intro about the author. So we welcome you, ma'am. And Hema ma'am is a very prolific author. She is known for her unique style of writing and is known for her one of a kind concepts, such as this book itself. She was born in New Delhi and she studied in Bangalore. She is a certified Reiki grandmaster who uses a lot of Reiki symbols to imbibe cosmic knowledge in all of her meditative writing, which the readers of this book would have noticed as well. She continues to hone her psychic skills to attune to higher realms. She teaches all three levels of Reiki, be it Mani Reiki, Karuna Reiki, or everything in between. She also conducts Akashic readings and conducts workshops online to empower people to read their Akashic records. So, without any further delay, we'll just jump right into the podcast. So, ma'am, how much, like, you have so much experience in Reiki and Akashic readings, and that's reflected in the book as well. So, how did you get into this field?
So this was something which happened very naturally for me, almost I would say over 2 decades ago,
Oh,
when
wow.
a lot of people were interested in learning about Reiki, and when I first heard the word Reiki, somewhere there was a deep connect in me, and I just knew that I had to learn it. It was
Right,
very natural. It was just very natural. Luckily, I met a master who could make me a grandmaster, and
right.
I was literally the first grandmaster in Goa.
Oh,
This is
wow.
way back, I think 2001, 2002, so it's almost 2 decades ago.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. That was when I was born. You have been practicing this for as long as I'm alive.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
And
So
what about, yeah, online workshops? How did you do that during the pandemic?
One thing I realized during the pandemic is people would ring up and ask for healing, and
Right.
we do distant healing. That's once you learn the second degree of Reiki, one can send Reiki and energies anywhere across the globe.
Oh,
And I
wow.
just realized that if we can do healing across the globe, we can do attunement also. And I started
Right.
teaching online and through WhatsApp, and everyone
Wow.
had very good experiences, so they could actually just sit at home and start healing people, heal those who had the virus, or heal even pets, anything you can, yeah, there's a
I
vast
find
arena
that
for
so
healing.
interesting.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really amazing. And that's reflected a lot in the book as well because the main character, Siddhartha, he
Yes.
uses a lot of spiritual and psychic powers to go about the whole mystery. So, how much of yourself is reflected in this book?
I think he's an extension of my psychic nature,
Oh,
because
wow.
I am basically a psychic medium. I whatever he has experienced in the book is something very real for me, and which
Right.
happens regularly in my life. The
Oh, wow.
feathers and the omens and all
Yeah.
those mystical insights. They are a natural extension of my life, so it comes very
Oh,
naturally to me.
that's so nice. Was any of them like inspired by any true life events? Like you mentioned the peacock feather and everything. Was there anything from your real life you just pulled in?
So there was one incident which happened, which I have not really included in the book, but I would like to just share it because it was something which was
Definitely.
amazing. This was on my second visit to Tijara Fort Palace when I thought I would write about the book. So I went to research, and explore the entire Fort Palace because it's really huge. And
Right.
my first visit was very brief. So I had gone with my cousins, and they were all waiting for me, and I didn't want to leave. I kept lingering, and they kept horning the car. So finally, I was staying in the Rani Mahal, and say from the threshold to the car is about 15 or 20 steps. It's not more
Okay.
than that. They were parked very close. And finally, I walked out, and as I was walking towards the car, I could see a huge white feather coming towards me, and it came and landed so perfectly that I didn't have to, I just opened the car door with my left hand and I closed my right hand. It just came and fell into my hand. It was so
Wow.
perfectly, I mean, that is something which is so amazing, because a feather
Beautiful.
fluttering in the wind, and
Yeah.
that perfect timing where my cousin sitting in the car didn't notice because I just closed my hand. I just had my
Right.
purse like this, so I had my hand out, and it just fell in that. So that was, something which gave me like a way, like the Fort Palace is saying that this is
Right.
another kind of a good luck sign for you, and go ahead.
Definitely.
Yes,
That's
yes.
actually so magical, that moment. I wish something like that happens to me.
Yes, you
Yeah,
never know. But so the thing is, it's also about being open and aware to your
that's true.
surroundings,
Right,
and
right.
seeing where the insights come in, and just being the little awareness creates a shift. And I'm sure that you will get blessed by the universal energies.
I hope so. Yeah, so
Yes,
you mentioned you have visited the fort as well. Is that like you have mentioned the fort in such like picturesque detail in the whole novel?
yes,
So like
yes.
how were you able to grab all those little bits and like craft such a beautiful scenic atmosphere?
Yes, so actually, I would like to say that when I first visited the Fort Palace, it was just for a
Right.
few hours, and I had no plans whatsoever to write a book about it. It's
Oh, right.
almost as if the book chose me, or the Fort Palace gave me this story. It
Oh,
was so
beautiful.
amazing because, we were headed to Tijara Fort Palace. It was an early morning drive, and we were nearing the palace, and we were busy taking pictures, very excited. It was on a hill, and suddenly we realized the driver's taken a wrong turn. And
Oh,
when we like looked around and saw that it was absolutely a dead end, he took a U-turn, and on the way back the car sank in the mud road. So we asked him,
oh,
why did you do this? He said, no, no, I was just told the last part is a mud road, and we had to wait. A tractor had to pull out the car, and about 3 weeks later, all of this kind of just came into my mind like a story. It was
right,
like
right.
a download. It was like a total download. So I just feel that sometimes, in life, a wrong turn can put you on track. It's just
Exactly.
something that happened for me like that. It
Yeah.
was very natural. And then once I decided, that I'm going to be writing about it, and I got the timelines and everything, then I visited the Fort Palace again. It's a beautiful luxury hotel, and
Oh,
I spent couple of days roaming around, getting ideas. So there is all those rooms over there which I've spoken about and detailed. It
yeah.
is like that. Yes, it's a lot
Right.
like that.
That's so beautiful. And even the mud road part which you mentioned, I think you incorporated that into the book as
Yes,
well. It's so
yes, yes,
beautiful how personal the book is to you, because all these magical moments are there for us to experience as well. So,
absolutely.
yeah,
And that I always thought that it was some mistake which kind of happened, or something which is not really meant to be. But the way that mud road and that white platform came in the beginning and at the end of the book, it seemed absolutely
yeah,
perfect for the book.
I know it
So
just tied everything in together beautifully. So,
yes, yes,
another thing I was wondering was you have selected this book in three specific timelines: the Kurukshetra battle, and then
yes,
Balwant Singh's part, and then the present day, which is a fictional part. All three of
yes.
them are tied together by the Tijara fort. So, why did you choose these specific timelines?
Yes. So, as I mentioned, that once I decided to write about the book, as I did research, I found out that the ancestors of the Tijara Fort Palace fought in the Kurukshetra War. They
Right.
didn't have a very big role. The ancestor's name was Major Shisharma. He was one of the
Okay.
allies of Duryodhan,
Right.
and they were actually fighting against the Pandavas. And
Okay.
Maharaj Sharma and his brothers were the ones who kind of took an oath that we will lead Arjuna far away so that Abhimanyu can be killed, because Abhimanyu
Yeah.
was wreaking havoc.
Yeah.
So it was one of those master strategies where they actually did their entire funeral rites before the night before, saying
Yeah.
that we are giving up our lives, but we will be successful in taking Arjun away from the battlefield.
Right. Right.
So that was being such an important, kind of incident. I used that. I
Right.
used the Chakra view, and the first timeline was all about the Kurukshetra war. And
Right.
also, I personally write a lot about the Bhagavad Gita. So Lord Krishna and the Mahabharata is something very dear to
Yeah.
me. And
Oh.
it was very natural that, when I have such an important kind of a, you could say this entire episode to write about, I could elaborate it and make it the first timeline.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the second timeline is when the Fort Palace actually started, being constructed
Yeah.
in the 19th century.
Yeah.
And that never was completed because the Maharaj was poisoned and killed.
Yeah.
And that formed the. So then the third timeline is something which I could, kind of use to the best of my imagination, and
Yeah.
yeah, put in whatever I wish to.
Right. And it's nice how there are so many recurring elements in all the timelines, like the whole, uh, like the ruthlessness of people to gain power and the Tijara crown or the
Yes,
Amrita or anything. So there are
yes.
recurring themes and everything which connects everything together.
Yes, yes. Actually, history is that it's all about power, prestige, and wealth.
Yeah.
And how there's always intrigue, and it's always within the family, the cousins, extended
Yeah.
cousins. Everyone wants the throne. you
Yeah.
know we see it around us all the time. And we can even say, if you look at England or something like that, the queen has held reign for, I think, the longest time, and
I
there are so
know.
many aspirants for the throne, but I would
Yeah.
always say the crown chooses the wearer. So that is what
That's
is also shown. Like, if I've also spoken about Babar,
yeah.
because in his he did construct a little bit, two or three rooms were there in Tijara Fort Palace, which are
Right.
there. When you go there, when you go and visit the Tijara Fort Palace, you will see the initial construction done by Babar also and his son. But
Oh.
as he continued to fight further battles, they never came back to Tijara.
Oh,
But
okay.
at that time also, he was seeking the crown. So they were looking to always gain the mastery of the place
Yeah.
and, rule the place.
Yeah. And I can't even imagine how you did the research for this book, because I've heard so many versions, especially when it comes to mythology. My
Yes,
grandmother has told me apart. I've read various different books in different perspectives. Like last week, I read one by Chitra Banerjee, The Palace of
yes.
Illusions. It
Palace of
was from,
Illusions.
yeah, so there are so many perspectives and it's retold in so many different ways. How did you do your research to get the actual facts down?
Yes, so I did read different versions, and
Okay.
somewhere I just relied on my own intuition and gut feeling that this is what is the most authentic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing is that you're right, there are so many versions, and each one has their own perception of the same event. So, one
Yeah.
can't say this is right or wrong. And finally, it was just a lovely flow. So I feel that the book itself chooses the authentic part or what is to be included. And
Right.
sometimes you just open a book and you see a paragraph and you realize, oh, this is something I can elaborate on and include it. So I
Yeah.
always felt guided in my writings, in all my writings, whether the Mahabharata or the Bhagavad Gita. I have always felt the guidance from the higher energies, the
Wow.
divine. It's a beautiful experience, because when I sit to write, I really wouldn't know what I'm going to be writing about. I just sit
Mhm.
waiting, and then as the words come down and I receive the guidance, I start writing. And
Right.
sometimes and always I'm very amazed at what I write about, and it's a wonderful experience.
It's so beautiful just listening to you because I've never heard such a description about like where you get your like one standard question we ask is where you get your inspiration from. And the way
Yes,
you're describing it itself is so magical and so spiritual. I've never heard something like this before. So,
yes.
sticking to the inspiration part, was there anybody who gave you any inputs? Like, there's a lot of police stuff going on. Uh, a lot of the way the mystery progresses is using like police procedure and everything, and a lot of medical details. Where did you get those
Yes.
points from?
Yes, so definitely the issues of the police and the panchnama, and then the final verdict. When I had the climax, whether
Yeah.
it would be valid in a court of judgment or anything. I did. There was a police officer. I have mentioned him in the acknowledgements. His
Yeah.
name is Shirish Thorat. He is now currently living in the US, and he's written 4 to 5 books,
Oh,
also published by Vishwakarma.
okay.
He gave me a lot of inputs. He also advised me about the structuring of the book. So, definitely, I was very particular because one cannot put across wrong information.
Definitely.
The whole information about the morgue and the visit in the morgue, there is another police officer who lives quite close to our house.
Oh,
I had spoken to him, and he gave me a lot of different insights, inputs, and even about when a murder happens, after how long the body turns stiff, and a lot of details which one wouldn't know, like a layman
yeah.
wouldn't know, but it's very routine for them. And
Yeah.
these small details make a difference in the narrative.
I know
So
that's what made it so realistic in the end.
yes, yes. Like even
Yeah.
that part of the rigor mortis setting in and the body being
Yeah.
stiff because it was 4 hours later.
Yeah.
Things like that was something. And also, I have another very close friend who's a doctor, and then I asked about the artery and the killing of the doctor, because one has to be very authentic. And
You're right.
also, I wanted to make it a little, kind of mysterious by not giving an
Right.
insight on who the murderer could be till the end. So I
I
had
know.
to keep that in the dark, even though there are insights here and there in the whole book, but yet, if you don't catch it, then you're left in the dark.
I know. And speaking of the characters, so there's actually a lot of talk about sexual harassment and abuse and everything in the book. So those
Yes.
are very sensitive topics, and reading them itself made me feel a bit uncomfortable at points. But you had handled it really well. How did you bring in that whole thing and decide what angle to take, how much to reveal about it, and everything?
Yes, I agree with you. These are sensitive topics. And sometimes people say you need a bit of it in a book, otherwise, the book doesn't
Yeah,
sell. And if your book is too boring and things like that. So you're right. It's just that fine balance. And
yeah,
in a way, I just felt the entire kind of personality I gave the Princess Rajkumari Mansi. She somehow could carry that as a person, because see, she was after the throne, she was ready to stoop to any level,
yeah,
and yet, so also the thing is that she herself was a skilled warrior. She could have
yeah.
actually killed the doctor if she wanted to, but
I know.
somewhere she had the ethics because she didn't need to.
Right,
I
right.
mean, even though he did rape her, he did abuse her, yet, she has not retaliated. She has upheld I would say, the name of the Tijara Fort Palace, because in
Right.
their lineage, it is just very easy. You give an order and, killings happen.
Just execute them.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. So obviously, everyone would think it's also her or the bodyguard, so
yeah,
there had to be also a motive for the murder. Somewhere one had to have something strong enough for a
yeah,
murder to take place.
yeah,
So, as I said, I kept getting these insights, and, how to kind of decode the Amrita, create the mystical, the mystery codes,
yeah,
and why Sanjay was finally ensnared, because he could have just
yeah.
disappeared.
I know that even at the end, it was kind of vague. It was an open ended ending. So
Yes,
there
yes,
was a point where I was suspecting everyone. Everyone had a motive, and I was like, "Who is it gonna be?" But you had just left it kind of open ended.
yes.
So
So
everyone had a motive.
yes, everyone had a motive, but the murderer, the one who did finally kill, had another motive, definitely.
Yeah,
And I also brought in a twist about his lineage, which was very
yeah,
unexpected for a lot of people. So,
yeah,
yeah, it was very, very interesting because one could kind of create these nuances and create red herrings,
yeah,
uh, and yet stick to the plot and yet not, kind of lose the plot, because it's
yeah.
very often very easy to go off the tangent and
That's
write
true.
something else.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I was actually wondering while reading the book, there were so many like mystery elements you had put in, which made you seem like someone who loves reading suspense novels. Because there was this thing where they opened the drawer and in a secret cabinet on the top, the mystery codes were hidden.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the ending part where they gave that flower bouquet just to get a blood sample and confirm everything, all that was so like professional, like you had read a lot more and this was something you're familiar with. So how much of a mystery novel reader are you?
So I actually have read Agatha Christie and Sherlock Holmes
Me
in school,
too.
college. Okay,
Same,
great.
same.
Yeah, so I did read Sherlock Holmes recently, about a decade ago, but I also found that if I would have read now, one tends to use their, kind of
Feel like an
whatever.
artist too.
Yes, just maybe take a little bit idea here and there. So the flower thing was something which literally came to me in a flash of intuition. I was just wondering because I was visualizing the entire scenario of them walking towards the Hawa Mahal. And then it
Right,
just struck me, that okay, if one needs a blood sample, these are the ways one can get it, you know,
right, right.
because there was a blood-stained letter found at the,
Yeah,
scene of murder. So,
yeah,
since a match could not be found, it was very important for a match to be found,
yeah,
because that is one way of verifying, and since it wasn't the victim's blood, it was obviously the perpetrators.
yeah.
So then I was thinking that this is so after I finished everything, I would cross check with the police officer, that would this hold
Okay.
and would this be okay. And then, so that's why I brought it in as plan D, plan E, because one has
Yeah,
to have different backups. It's very easy if everything goes fast, but if
yeah.
things don't work out, if this doesn't happen, that doesn't happen, then you start getting worried. The climax is going to happen, and we don't know who the
I
murderer
know.
is.
Yeah, I know it was like the last 50 pages, and I'm like, how is this going to tie up at the end? And then it just revealed at the last moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was also really nice. But I also want to ask you, the ending was kind of open ended though, because the last question was just inviting him to
Yes.
the wedding. So
Yes.
can we expect a book two for this?
Yes, yes, definitely, definitely. I would say another maybe 16 to 18 months and should be out.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
I have got the story. It's going to be different from this one. It's going to be maybe a little bit faster paced,
Oh, okay.
but it's a continuity for sure. Yes. And
Nice.
actually, the idea came to me, and that's why I also left it a bit open ended, of course, and ended with the wedding. Because you
Right.
see, everyone will be wondering, the Maharajas had the elixir and he has 1 year to live. So is he
Yeah.
going to live for 1 year, or what's going to happen? Because
Exactly. Yeah.
that question has to be answered. And
Yeah.
whenever there's a curse, then there's always a fear, because you see,
Yeah.
when a curse is not revoked, then
Yeah.
one has to succumb to the curse.
Yeah.
Like, if we see the epics, whenever the sages have given, when they are angered and they
Yeah.
curse someone, then they also try to revoke it, or they give a remedy. But
Yeah.
in this case, Maharani Madri died. She was on the
Yeah.
funeral pyre when she cursed,
Yeah.
so she could not revoke it. The Maharaja Balwant Singh, he also, while dying, he cursed. So when a curse is not revoked, then it takes place. So the
Yeah.
question now in everyone's mind is like, will the Maharaja live a year or not? So
That's so
he
true.
yeah, so he preempts that by having the daughter's wedding, before that. So let's see what happens in the second.
Really looking forward to that.
Yes,
And
yes.
what else are you working on right now? Is there any other new concept you're trying out? Like, what else are you working on at the moment?
So actually, I am currently revising my first book, which I wrote, I would say, about 3 decades ago. Yeah, that's.
Three
Uh,
decades. I wasn't even
yeah,
born
I
then.
was. Yeah, you were not born. I was in my 20s. Yeah. So actually, I would say that my first book, it was called The Eternal Ocean of Brahma.
Yeah,
And this book, Tijara's
Tijara.
Mystery Codes is a new genre for me, and The Eternal Ocean of Brahma was, of course, my first book. I would say that the books chose me because certain
Right.
incidents happened in my life which made me write this. Like honestly, if I had not gone to Tijara Fort Palace or if the car had not got stuck, I
Yeah.
wonder, whether I would have ever written it because I wouldn't have noticed the platform, I wouldn't have noticed the mud road.
Yeah. So
And
it was all
similarly,
situational.
yes, yes. So it's almost as if it was meant to be. And similarly, like this, I was not even married. I had gone to Chennai for an I was in my cousin's house in Chennai, and we
Okay.
decided to go for an early morning walk to the beach. And
Marina Beach.
yeah, Marina Beach. And I've been there like dozens of times, maybe hundreds
I
of
live
times.
in Chennai. That's one of my favorite spots.
So just imagine, yeah, and Chennai is so beautiful. And the thing with
Yeah.
Goa is we get the sun on the west, but there you get the rising sun, right?
Yeah.
So early morning walk is something I always look forward to, and I love to swim also. But
Oh,
that
nice.
particular day I was walking, and what happened is my cousin met a couple of her friends. So she was chatting with them. And as I was strolling, the waves of the ocean started speaking to me. And then they started whispering the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. And,
Oh, nice.
it was something which I had not ever thought of. And then slowly I started compiling my thoughts. A year later, I was married. I came to Goa. So I had access to the beach. I grew up in Bangalore. So,
Yeah.
Bangalore has no beach or anything.
Yeah.
So I would say that, literally these books chose me and they gave me the insights, the wisdom. And I received some amazing, reviews. Like I was compared to Newton and Archimedes that, you've
Yeah.
created something
Yeah.
new. Like, how can the ocean teach you the Bhagavad Gita? But I've got an
I know.
entire book on that. And currently I'm revising that, the process of, putting in now the energies of 2022 because the world is
To
so
stay relevant.
dynamic.
Yeah.
Yes, so many things are happening now. We're speaking of the fifth dimension, and being a psychic
Yeah.
medium, this is something I work with a lot. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah, so I'm in the process of revising a few of my earlier books.
Oh, that's really nice. We really look forward to that as well. So we'll just jump to some audience questions right now.
Yes, yes. So
Uh,
I just read a question where they've asked for a Kindle version, and the Kindle
yeah.
version will be out on the 15th of June.
Right.
The publishers have
Oh,
informed me
very
that.
soon. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Right. So there's one more by Anchal. She has asked,
yes.
you have meticulously described a lot of details related to the decor, interior, and designs inside the Tijara fort. Each scene has its beauty with its sophisticated ambience. Are you intrigued by interior design and aesthetics in your real life as well?
Yeah, that's a lovely question. I never thought of it, but yes, I
Oh,
enjoy doing that. I think it's an extension. Like in my own home, I have actually designed it, whichever way we could do by maybe looking at magazines, going, color combinations. But I love working with, the energies of the home,
right.
the colors, the interiors, because I feel that the interior reflects the personality of the person.
Yeah.
So
I was just
definitely,
noticing your background as well. You have some crystals there, copies of your
yes,
book.
yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
This is my study where I write, and
Oh,
it's like where I am the most comfortable. And crystals give a lot of energy, and yes, I also speak a lot of the Atlantis, and I have an upcoming book, maybe 2 to 3 years later, which is going to be historical fiction. It's
Oh,
Atlantis, as you know, is a submerged civilization. So it's about Atlantis and Dwarka, and both are submerged civilizations.
oh, right,
So,
right.
yeah. So
How
one
do
is
you
ten
make these
thousand.
connections?
Yeah, so one is 10,000 years ago, one is 5,000 years ago.
Yeah,
And yeah, so I enjoy working with timelines. It comes very naturally to me, time travel and things like that.
that's amazing, honestly. So there's one on who is your favorite character in the whole book and why?
Okay,
Let me
wow.
guess, is it Siddhartha? Because he's literally you.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, you guessed right. Yes, Shweta, it is Inspector Sid. And I thought, that one is giving him that guise of an interior decorator is very good because no
Yeah,
one would suspect he's a police officer. And
yeah,
the thing is, when you are meeting a police officer, you're on your guard, you don't say the wrong
yeah,
things, and you're very careful. So then, obviously, the inspector doesn't get the full knowledge. And
yeah,
also, with his being psychic and intuitive, he can kind of read body language, he can kind of, get
yeah,
further insights. So, as an interior decorator, I found that, he could kind of very positively use his talents. And also,
yeah,
he was given a very strategic location in the Fort Palace. His
yeah,
entire room was there.
right.
So, yes.
Yeah. And there was also a part where he just was a palmistry reader for a while.
Yes,
So,
that was, yeah, yeah. That was, kind of to involve one of the Rajkumars and the prince. Like
yeah,
when you want to strike a conversation, you have to catch someone's attention. So then he thought of that. And
yeah,
yeah, so the thing is, I mean, in school and college, I did have that Cairo's book of palmistry. I used to read,
oh,
but then, things, one forgets about it. But yeah,
oh.
and honestly, I'll be honest. Like if you go somewhere and you find someone reading hands, wouldn't you just sit there and wait for your
I would
turn
be
also?
curious immediately. Yeah,
Yeah. So it's something very natural in a human being to know about the future, or to get some insights. So I
yeah,
thought that would be a very kind of a nice way for the inspector to connect to the Rajkumar.
definitely. And there's also one by Arushi. I enjoyed reading the character of Sid. Would you like to tell what you thought of his role while jotting down his part in the book?
Yeah. So Siddhartha is.
Very unique character.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. And I think, also I could put in a combination of talents, you know.
Yeah,
Like he was also very sensitive to Sanjay's father when, he met him for the first time.
yeah,
And yet he could kind of, he was also swayed by Manasi, when we went and Manasi tried to seduce him. So I
yeah,
thought that, he could play a lot of character, a lot of roles, and,
yeah,
multifaceted. Finally,
exactly.
I think the protagonist has to have a multifaceted role because otherwise it does get a little boring. And I think since there were so many timelines, I could kind of use different, kind of incidents to because eventually what ties the three timelines is that part where
Yeah,
Siddhartha is talking to the Maharaj about Lord Krishna and the Mahabharat connect.
yeah,
The penultimate day when they meet late night. So what happens actually, the Maharaj is fearing that his family is involved, and for a Rajput, especially the Maharaj, he does not want the family honor to be tainted. So he
yeah,
calls Siddhartha late night to kind of get an insight whether it's his wife or daughter or son, so that he can maybe suppress the whole thing. But instead,
right,
Siddhartha talks to him about Lord Krishna and the Mahabharat. And
right.
I think that was a very beautiful story, which again, it showed a very human part of Siddhartha, where he spoke of the sparrow and Lord
Yeah,
Krishna.
yeah,
Because the Kurukshetra war was a battlefield where lakhs of warriors were killed. I mean, the dynasties were toppled, the
yeah,
Maharajas, princes, it didn't matter how much wealth you had, all of them died if they
yeah,
were on the side of Adharma. And in all that mayhem, Lord Krishna has protected a family of four sparrows, four baby sparrows. It sounds like so amazing. And
Yeah.
I just thought that, that would show Siddhartha in a very different way as a very sensitive human being. And also,
Empathetic person.
yes, and also being correct, he never wavered.
Yeah.
Even in that, he never wavered, and he told the Maharaj that I will not speak against the family, but whatever is necessary, I cannot hide the facts. So he
Yeah.
was very true and honest to his role, and that is exactly what we see Krishna doing. Whoever
Yeah.
sought his, assistance, his blessings, and whoever was on the side of dharma, he has protected them,
Yeah.
whether it was the Pandavas or whether it was the family of sparrows. But
Yeah.
those, even Bhisham Pitama, even the great the Dronacharya, all of them, since they were on the side of adharma, they all had, finally were killed.
Yeah.
So in that, also portrayed how Siddhartha sticks to the values, the traditions, the
Yeah.
values, and uses everything to his advantage. You know.
Yeah. That's
So
really beautiful because that was the point where I love mythology and I've heard a lot of different stories. And I was
yes,
just connecting all that and how everything came together at the end. And I was like, oh yeah, like these are stories we have heard, but we
yes,
won't really remember. And just reminding ourselves of those stories is really insightful. So
absolutely.
yeah. So there's one from Deepali. Though
Yes.
I've not read the book yet, but got the blurb of the book. As the book is based on three historical timelines having mystery and thrill, I want to know how did you get the concept of the book? How did you manage to connect the three timelines together?
Yeah, yes. Thank you, Dipali. Excellent question. And basically, I would say that, the three timelines I just spoke a little earlier, that they were actually incidents which happened in the ancestry of the Tijara Fort Palace.
Yeah,
The earliest ancestors who are known to us and are, recorded in the annals of history were Maharaj Susharma and his brothers, and they were fought on the side of the Kauravas. They were the allies of Duryodhan. And
yeah,
many times they assisted Duryodhan against the Pandavas. So, that is one of the earliest ancestors. The second ancestors are the step brothers, Maharaj Vinay Singh and Maharaj Balwant Singh. Again, the British divided them by giving one third of the property to Maharaj Balwant Singh. So actually,
yeah,
Vinay Singh was the rightful heir. He was the true, I would say the true heir to the throne. He was the son of Maharaj Bakhtawar Singh. But the British chose to have the divide and rule, and they wanted to create factions within the family. So they
yeah.
gave it to Balwant Singh. So since he was the one who started the construction of the fort palaces, that's how the second timeline came in. And
Oh,
also,
right.
there are three fort palaces in the entire, area. And
Oh,
I could use it very advantageously. We have the Mardana Mahal, which is for the men, and the Rani Mahal.
Hawa Mahal. And, yeah,
Yeah, and the Hawa Mahal is more for, the food and the leisure and all that.
yeah,
So I could use each part of the palace, and this construction started, in the 19th century. And then the main storyline is fictional, and I have been asked this question often. Why did I choose 77? I don't know. It just is something which again
it came
flowed
to
in.
you.
Yeah, it came to me. It was only one thing I had to check is actually whether the tractors were there or not, because I have used the tractor pulling out Sid's car. So the tractors came into India somewhere in the 60s. So
Oh, right.
it's just something which kind of happened, and then now with the sequel continuing like this, it's I mean, it's let's see, there may be a couple of sequences, you never know, because I am now in the process of going in for an OTT for the Tijara's Mystery
Oh,
Court.
wow.
Yeah, that is
Oh,
in the
that's amazing.
yeah, that's in the pipeline. I mean, definitely, it
Yeah.
has potential. I am in talks with a couple of producers, but it will take time. I'm not in a hurry. And I kept the film rights very deliberately for that. Yeah.
Oh, that's this is the first time I'm hearing this. Have you like discussed this before?
No, no, no. It's not really out because the thing is, I mean,
Not
in the
coming out
process
yet.
of discussion and
Right.
talks, but I have
This is
spoken to
really
yeah,
exciting.
4 to 5 producers, and you see, each one has their own kind of perceptions of the book. So I mean, one has to give them time. But what
Hmm.
has happened today is there's a lot of demand for content, you know
Yeah,
because so you would know of many books now being converted to films and
yeah,
or to OTT, and the so also what happens with OTT is that you get to kind of have more details, whereas if this entire book is to be made a film, you just have 3 hours, whereas if you have
yeah,
episodes, one can go on endlessly.
yeah,
So definitely the sequel will be there, and maybe another sequel. I have no clue yet, but it's all a beautiful expression of creativity. So this is
yeah.
something I really enjoy.
And the part about coming on OTT is something really to look forward to, because while reading the book, first of all, I was able to get through very quickly because the chapters are kind of short. So
Yes,
anything with
yes,
short chapters you can get through quickly, and it kind of felt like a script in itself. The whole
yes.
part about describing, maybe the part where the Raja had these plates which would detect poison. The way
Uh,
you had written it itself, I could visualize it like a movie. And the fact that it's really going to come as a motion
yes,
picture is really exciting to know.
yes, yes.
Okay, so the discussion has been really insightful so far. So, would you like to
Yeah.
give some book recommendations? Like we were talking about how much you love mysteries and mythology and everything. What kind of books, like what are you reading right now? What would you recommend?
So actually, I have just attended the Kumaon Literary Festival, and
Oh,
so that is where the Tijara's Mystery Codes was released last
oh
month.
wow.
Yes, and I attended a couple of. There were another 3 or 4 book releases, and
Okay.
as I mentioned, Lord Krishna is a person very, like, I mean, I would say my entire life is inspired by him. So there was a book release of Srila Prabhupada, who's the founder
Okay.
of ISKCON. And
Right,
this
right.
was, yeah, so this was written by an author, Hindol Sengupta, and he is actually an outsider in the sense he's not from the ISKCON group. So it
Okay.
was one of the first books written of their founder by an outsider, by an author,
Yeah,
And I attended the session. I was really looking forward to it because the vice president of ISKCON and all had come. It was a wonderful session. Before the session, I bought the book because I thought, there'll be a crowd and etc. later. And it was like the first session on Sunday morning. And when I went to the author with the book, he asked me, "How did you get the book?" I said, "Why?" He said, "It's not yet out." I said, "No, but I bought it." So he said, "You bought the first book in India." So I was
oh
like, "Oh, wow."
wow.
And I couldn't believe that. So then, anyway, I said, "Okay."
Amazing.
Uh, it was just something meant to be. So I'm currently reading that book. It is Sing,
Okay.
Dance, and Play. And it's
Right.
very beautiful because it also depicts the kind of difficulties he had. It was not easy
Right.
at the age of 70 to go to America and start an international movement, which having no money. It's very, very inspiring. So
Yeah.
currently, this is one of my reads, not something mystery or
Right.
yes, but
Right.
yeah, so this is what I'm currently reading, and very, very. So one can learn from any book and every way.
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
not, yeah, and sometimes even something like a poem can touch your heart and inspire you.
Yeah.
So one of the authors who I've been deeply inspired by is Sri Aurobindo. I have
Yeah.
been reading his works for, I would say, decades, and I've had experiences where I've read a paragraph and written like 5 pages. Because
I
his
know.
words are so rich, and one can actually just read a line or two and meditate on it. It's that profound and powerful.
Yeah.
So I always look to read, and I always have like a stack of books on my bedside table. I pick up different ones at different
Same,
times.
same.
Yeah, because
Right.
yeah, and currently this is what I'm doing also with my writing, since I'm revising a book and I'm also looking at the sequel, and I'm also
Yeah.
currently coming out with something maybe for the first time in India, channeled books.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so when I say channeled books, I would say that one receives messages from higher realms. So whether it is like from, say, the Satya Sai avatar or Shirdi Sai avatar,
Right.
who are no longer in physical form, but you receive the messages.
Yeah.
So I have received over, I would say, thousands messages, and I've compiled them into smaller books. And
Oh, right. So
currently,
it's
I
like an
have
anthology?
so it's just kind of messages which give a deep guidance.
Right. Right,
Yeah.
right.
So there's nothing, there's no kind of a subject matter. It is just like, say, I would write the date and the time. So it's like
Okay.
maybe one or two or max 3 pages per, per message. Sometimes they're shorter, and I've even received for Navratri. So
Oh, right.
like that I have received, and the messages are so profound. Like there was one where the divine mothers are saying that we are capable of giving so much more. Why do you only ask us for wealth or
Yeah.
wisdom? We can bestow so much. You are limiting yourselves by asking for these paltry things. So the encouraging is, I mean, it's kind of encouraging people to seek for things which they cannot even comprehend or envisage in their life.
That's
And
true.
it's about opening your perspective and gaining insights. So primarily I write non-fiction. This is actually my first fiction. The
Oh, good.
Tijara's
Right.
Booknerds is my first book. Yeah, and it kind of flowed very naturally for me. I didn't
Yeah.
feel I was doing a genre which was different. Or, in
I
fact,
know because you mixed both fiction and non-fiction together, so it was like a smooth
yeah.
transition into this world.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And the thing with historical kind of fiction is one has to do a bit of research, which is very
Yeah.
interesting because when you have the research details, like for me, what happens if it's just pure history, then I do, maybe add a bit of fiction or add a bit. But when
Yeah.
it's mythology, I don't normally add. Like whatever I've written about the Mahabharata or Lord Krishna is very authentic. I don't
Yeah.
believe in kind of giving too much of twist to it,
Yeah.
because one must respect it. And, they are our scriptures, our epics. We
Yeah.
actually are kind of sharing the knowledge in our own way, but the basic message has to be the same. One cannot
Exactly.
twist it too
Yeah.
much.
That's true. So thank you
Yes.
so much for taking so much time out for this. Seriously,
Yeah.
one thing I have gained from this session is to be
Yes.
more open and aware about my surroundings, because
Okay.
like one thing you said was to be open, and even
Yeah.
now like retaining the beauty of things, I feel I am too conscious, like I'm waiting for things to happen. So as you said, it happens unconsciously, so when you're not even expecting, things just happen. So
Yes.
that's one thing I've definitely learned from this. And thank you so much for the session, ma'am. It was really insightful.
Most
And
welcome.
the pleasure is ours. And guys, you can get the book on Amazon and definitely go check it out if you haven't yet. And stay tuned for the next podcast. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Meenakshi. Wonderful discussing with you. Yeah. Look forward.
Definitely, ma'am. Looking forward to your future works as well.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.